With Camel ADV, I'm going to do the install video tonight on the KTM 950 and 990 adventure motorcycles. The auxiliary fuel tank on this bike is very simple to install. You do need to have a 2-in-1 exhaust system on your bike though. A few companies make the crossover pipes, so check them out. Rottweiler, CJ Designs, Remus, there might be a couple others. Anyway, give one of those guys a call and they'll be able to set you up. Installation should take you about an hour to do. It's one of our, it's probably the easiest setup we have actually for the Camel tank. It is a gravity feed system. Most of our other stuff is vacuum. This one is dead simple gravity. And yeah, we'll get at it. So in your kit, of course, you have the tank. You've got a front mounting bracket, a super beefy rear mounting bracket, our fuel line, our vent line, some zip ties, a three-way barb valve or barb fitting. We've got a simple off-on ball valve. We've got a one-way fuel valve. And then we've got some miscellaneous bits and pieces in the kit here. Also in the kit, there'll be a couple of decals and there'll be some paperwork. The paperwork is important. We do the install videos, and if there's any changes to the kit, once the video is done, we're not going to redo a video for every change we make to the kit. It may be some different fasteners or different hoses or different fuel clamps. So it is very important that you read the information that's in the kit. If you email us and say, hey, my kit is missing parts, it's probably not missing parts at all. It's probably just been a change. So make sure that you read it. There'll only be a couple of pieces of paper in the kit, so it's not like you're reading a novel. We're just going to do a little bit of prep on the tank before we get started with the install. In your kit, there's two ORB fittings. One of them rattles, and that's a rollover valve, and that's going to go into the vent fitting on the back of the tank. So we've got a stainless steel washer that goes over top, and then we've got a sealing washer. And we're just going to install that here. And we're just going to tighten this down. Just until the sealing washer starts to come out just a little bit around the backing washer. And then our other ORB fitting, the one that doesn't rattle, I'm going to get the same setup. Backing washer, sealing washer, into the front of the tank. And same thing, just tighten it just so the sealing washer is coming out around the backing washer. We have our tethered fuel cap. The tether's in a plastic bag. The bolt for the cap is in the bag as well. It's not with the rest of your parts. So if you tear this open and pull the tether out, that bolt may go flying. Just be aware of that. Everything we do today is going to get a dab of blue Loctite unless otherwise mentioned. And on this bolt, you don't want to overdo it with the Loctite, or it'll keep the tether from swiveling properly. And the bolt is intended to be longer than the blind hole in the cap, just keeps that turning nice and freely. So we're going to put the cap on the tank before we start doing the install on the bike, just to keep any debris from falling into the tank. So there's two black anodized coupler nuts that are in the kit, and they're going to go between the prongs on the rear mounting bracket. And we have two 35mm bolts and one 20mm bolt. I'm going to take the 20mm with a flat washer, and we're going to put it in the back hole on the outside. And just snug that guy up. And this is a 17mm wrench if you need to hold the coupler nut. Once you've done the 2-into-1 exhaust, you'll have an extra hanger on this side, and this is actually where our tank bracket is going to mount. So we're going to remove these. And depending on your pannier system, this will be a little bit different, but we're just going to take out the bolt here that's holding in the grab handle. This bolt goes all the way through to the that exhaust hanger bracket that we were just taking the bolts out of on the other side. And be careful because there can be some little spacers and things floating around. So with that exhaust hanger bracket out of the way, I'm going to take an M8 by 35 mil bolt, a little bit of blue Loctite, with that coupler nut already installed in the back hole. And we're going to get this guy started here. It's important that you use the flat washers on both sides of this. If you don't, the bolt lengths can be a little bit too long and bottom out and keep them from tightening properly. Just going to hand tighten that one. Again, the other M8 by 35. Loctite. I'm just going to put this one in part way. Just keep it back far enough that we can get that coupler nut started. And then the same as the rear one, we're just going to tighten this up. And then we're going to take our bolt here that was in the grab handle, stick that guy back in. So now that's tightening into the coupler nut as well. So you can snug that guy up. You may need to put the 17 mil wrench on the coupler nut to keep that from turning. So we're going to put our front mounting bracket on the tank with the M6 by 10 button head bolts. And put Loctite on here as well. And then we're going to come up to your pillion, your rear pillion mounting hole, and stick a bolt in here just to hold this all together. And they don't have to be tight. And then we're going to rotate the tank up into position like so. And we're going to take our M6 by 20 hex heads and flat washers. Again, it's important to use the flat washers or else you will bottom this out in the hole. And most of these mounting brackets have slots cut in them, so there's some adjustability. So you want to get all the bolts in first before you tighten anything up. And then we can put the bolts on the back side. And when we've decided we're happy with the fit, we can tighten all this stuff up. You can see with the slots here, there's some movement in the front, and then the slots on the back. There's some movement with the tank. It can go back and forth as well. And I just want to make sure we get it in a good spot. So we don't run pillion pegs on this bike. You may, so we've included an 1/8 inch spacer, and you're going to put that on the front pillion peg mount. It's the same thickness as this, so your bracket won't be all tweaked up. And once we're happy with everything, we can come and we can tighten these two bolts here on the bottom. And we come up to our front bracket here and tighten this. And we can finish tightening these. So we've got lots of room between the tire and the tank. The tank is out on a little bit of an angle, that's intentional. Just with the weight of the fuel, when you're going over rough terrain, this has a tendency to move over a little bit, so we wanted to preload it to the outside. With the tank physically mounted, we can go ahead and plumb it. As I mentioned before, this is a gravity feed system. We've included 2 valves with this. This is a one-way valve, and then we've got a ball valve. This is a little bit clunky and isn't as slick as some of the other ones. I like this one because it's dead simple, absolutely reliable. It's a kind of industrial grade valve rather than some of the sort of hobby ones that are out there. And definitely with the fuel, we don't want any issues with leaks. So we're going to put our ball valve between the tank and the one-way valve. So it's going to be an arrangement like that. So we need the one-way valve because your main tank is much higher than the top of your rear tank. So when you fill that, when your main tanks are full, the fuel is simply going to flow backwards and then overfill your rear tank, and you're going to have fuel everywhere. So we've got the one-way valve on here, and then we've got this as if you want to use the tank as a reserve system only rather than have it automatically drain. So we've got fuel taps. We got one here and one on the back side here, and then there's the hose that connects the two. We're going to splice into that hose to plumb the Camel tank. So before you do that, you want to make sure that you have your fuel taps turned off because we're going to be cutting into it. If those are open and you cut into it, then you're going to get the contents of both tanks, all of your workbench and all of yourself. You're going to want to put a pan underneath the hose here. When you cut this, even with the taps off, you're going to get the fuel that's in that line leaking out. And obviously just be careful not to cut yourself when you're doing this. And this one's a brand new hose, so we didn't get anything out of it. And then we're going to put in our T-fitting. The T-fitting we're using is just it's got a single barb or single gator back on each barb. So you're going to want to put one of the bolt style hose clamps on here first before you slide it on. And if you give this guy a shot of silicone, it slides in much easier. Like so. And you're going to turn this just so it's sort of pointed up this direction here. And then you can tighten down these hose clamps. And then we're going to take the fuel line that's included in the kit, stick a hose clamp on this one. Again, give that barb just a shot of silicone. And then we're going to put our fuel line onto the barb. And tighten that guy down. And we're just going to zip tie our fuel line. There's a few good spots to keep it up and out of the way. Your oil drain hose here is a good spot. We're just going to leave these loose right now. You're going to come behind your other vent hoses here. Like so. Then we're going to put another zip tie around the frame. Leave a little bit of slack in here. And we want to add another one here. You need to be careful because there's a wheel here that the chain rides on when the suspension comes all the way up. So you want to make sure that you're higher than that. Again, we're going to leave that one loose. We're going to have the vent hose coming from the Camel tank head. So we're going to leave these loose enough that we can fish that line in with it. You're going to arrange the ball valve and the one-way valve in this orientation. So you just make sure that this guy's pointed the right direction when you do this. You want to be able to have the lever moved up when it's closed and out when it's open. And then we're going to slide this on. And when we're happy with the location, just cycle the handle here and make sure that you're going to clear with that bracket. And there's a groove here between the sections on the valve. It's a great spot for a zip tie. And just give that a check again before you tighten it. Like that, then we can do another one. Then we're just going to snip these zip ties. Perfect. And then we come back. And then our final hose clamp here. Like so. And while we're working in the same area, we're going to do the vent hose for the Camel tank. And we're going to run it down here with the rest of the vents from the bike. And there's usually a zip tie or a clip here holding that stuff together. And all the stuff here. And we're going to tuck our hose in with it and zip it. Give it a snip. And then we're going to work our way back, follow this hose, and it will go to the top back of the Camel tank. Once that's through here, we can tighten up the zip tie and snip it. The fuel line here, we're going just over top of the wheel where the chain comes up. So hopefully you've left enough room with your zip ties to get this guy through. And you can tighten that one down. And again, just check that clearance. So you want to make sure you watch the clearance between that ball and the suspension itself. We're going to put the zip tie around this gusset here. And then we're going to feed the vent line through it. And then up between the two arms on the rear bracket here. Then we're going to take our vent line, the spring hose clamp. It's best if you put safety glasses on with these. They've got a lot of tension in them. So up over the signal light and on over the rollover breather valve. So I need to find a home to attach the tether to. You can put it around the grab handle. When this piece is off, you can loop it around. It is a little bit tight in that location, so one of the tubes back here is a better idea. You can simply throw a zip tie through one of the slots here. If you have pannier racks, you can have a bunch of other options, but I'll just show you real quick here. So this is my first choice here. Just loop it over like that. It's not going anywhere. And then you can put your cargo plate back on. So we've got the tank mounted and plumbed. You're good to go. Just remember to turn your fuel petcocks back on your main tanks. If you have any questions about the install, about the product, you can give us an email, info@cameladv. Thanks for watching.